All right, we are live. So,
Awesome. Have like a Twitch link?
oh yeah. Let me. It is Jasper Laz. That's not a link proper, but just type that in. Then that'll pop up. The first, before we even start this, I do want to just kind of, as a as a kind of tip for playing against characters and players you're not super familiar with, something that I do, and I've heard other people do as well, and people, it seems to be working for a wide variety of people, is put people in boxes. So basically, stereotype players until they prove you wrong.
Yeah.
So here Silver plays Fox and Falco. I played Silver once, like 3, 4 years ago, and you said that you played Silver pretty rarely for being in a similar, like, for your proximity to him at least in
Yeah.
region. So one thing that can make this easier is we can just put him into a box until he breaks out of it, right? So we can say, oh, this is the Fox box. The Fox box includes good ledge dashes. It includes, up throw up air, soft nair up smash. It includes maybe spot dodge shine, wake up like on tech chase, spot dodge shine, things like that.
hmm
And then as let me get my little pen tools over here. And then as the match goes on, maybe we see, oh, there's a hole in the Fox box. He doesn't do these things. So now, at that point, you have the silver box. So maybe 50% of this, everything in the Fox box aside from this hole is in here. And then you have the silver things. You have habit A. Maybe he uses fair as an extension in a creative way that you haven't seen before. You have these exceptions to the rule,
hmm
and this is really useful for two reasons. One, because all of this Fox is like stereotype habits. They're not like they're still useful because the reason spot dodge shine is kind of a very common habit, and for our purposes a stereotype, is because it's good. Because shine's really good with all three spaces. Because spot dodge is pretty hard to cover unless you're reading it, and those two things together is a big deal. So even when he breaks out of the initial Fox box stereotype, right? That just means that, this is information that goes over here. You don't lose, like, and the fact that he's proving you wrong on something also makes this much easier to notice during a set.
hmm
So if you're expecting spot dodge shine on a tech chase wake up, and you try to bait that, and he just raw like run up grabs you, instantly you know what he did, right? It's not, you had an expectation and it was shattered, and because of that really gets your awareness. That whiplash is if it guarantees that you notice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So because of that, that means that it's very easy to kind of get started on this, like, oh hey, here's the silver half, the silver specific half of the silver box. Whereas this half can just be, oh, the Fox stereotypes. Because the way characters work, Ness is going to double jump cancel fair. But maybe Akimi is going to EX fire a lot.
hmm
And being able to kind of separate and or combine depending on what direction you're going, these two things is very useful. Because no matter how good silver is, right? Up throw up air is a kill confirm at 80. That is something you have to worry about. Soft nair is a kill confirm at 80, 85. You have to worry about that. And he might be using them in tricky ways or not, or choosing when to use and when to not use. But at this level, he is going to either represent the threat of things like up throw up air as a kill confirm, or hit you for being afraid of those threats, which is a different kind of representation of a threat entirely. All right. But that is all basically just, this is all happening during the game, and especially in game 5 sets. You can take a minute between games and go, okay, Silver got a fair extension to up smash that I haven't seen before, or maybe I haven't seen in PM before. That's something I need to worry about. And then, especially if it's something unique or weird or novel, the question is, Why don't I see that more often? Is it difficult? Is it kind of a funky positioning? Or is maybe in this case, fair on shield is worse than his other aerials? So it's a higher risk option. It's worse air to air. It's worse on shield. Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the why can be after. This can be in between games. This can be on the drive home. This can be, in these kind of these VOD reviews kind of things. The big thing is just in a match, you want to be able to have something to go off of, some kind of game plan. So if you don't know the player, right, if you have Scrimblow Bimblow who's playing Fox, there's, you have no idea what any of this is, any of the Scrimblow Bimblow specific habits. So you can just use the Fox box until they prove you wrong. And then from there you go, oh, Scrimblow Bimblow loves down tilt at 90, right? That's a down tilt kill confirm habit. And even if it's something that Fox has and is good, maybe he really likes that down tilt.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I definitely understand. This was one of the things I was more interested in when I was watching your VOD review with Comp. And it helps a lot having it explained, I guess, in relation to this set that we're about to watch, as well as in relation to my own player stuff as well. Kind of like what Ness does, and then what Fox does, which I know a lot more about than what Rob or Lucario does.
Right. Both of these characters are really good examples, actually, because in PM, there's what was it, like 2016, I think, where there was a year where 5 different Nesses made top 8 at huge events, and you have all of these Ness influences, and so every Ness you played at that time, you have Ness, right, and then you have Akimi, you have Reslived, you have the individual. And then on the other hand, the Melee side of it, even if you don't watch a ton of Melee, you've seen Fox and Falco. So you know the basics of Falco loves lasers. Lasers are ways to make me stop moving. But, maybe how Silver uses lasers are ways he likes it as a bait option, or is it just a harass tool to just stay safe and annoy you? With these characters that have such high representation, this is a very useful thing to do, because it's easier to figure out the Falco stuff when you've seen 20 Falcos. All the stuff in common of Shine on Shield is obviously good. Or the Ness stuff. Maybe Akimi loves the X-Fire, but the other Nesses don't do it as much. So you know that if you're playing a Ness you haven't heard of or you haven't really studied before, you can just start with the specific stuff. You don't have to worry about EX Fire until they show their hand that, they're going to do EX Fire, they're going to do it a lot, etc.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think with that, let's go ahead and hop into the match. I managed to watch the first, I believe, 2 games.
Okay, so the 2 Fox games then.
Yeah, he didn't quite switch off yet. I love that forward throw. But this is the first instance. Notes also good info to have during the game. You caught him actively crouching, not even just ASDIing down, but full on crouching.
Yeah.
So if you can, on some characters it's harder to see than others, but if you can as you're up throwing recognize that was real crouch, that gives you pretty good info about opting for true CC. And then either between games or between stocks, when you have a moment to breathe, you can think, okay, so Silver gave up movement for true CC. Was he afraid of forward air? Was he afraid of dash attack? Why was Fox not moving in this matchup at this moment?
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, you get this mix-up here, right? You get the reward, because the plat is going to make this hard. Even if you can jump on and tech chase, but it is a tech chase instead of a guaranteed thing, so I like this. But now that you've enforced this position, it's kind of a little awkward for you, because it's hard to clip this with Bear if you don't know the exact angle. And between Smashville, Plat, he might be able to snap to ledge if he gets this angle, if you don't move. And then going straight, or, any slight variations in between here. This is kind of hard to react to. So the general consensus is that you want to hit him before he can move, especially if he's starting his mix-up so far off stage here. If you clip him with fair, he actually just literally dies.
Yeah.
And this position covers side B, so you assumed he was, you guessed he was going to side B. He did not, and now it's like a weird position. I think the only, I forget, is Ness a character that your double jump turns you around?
No,
No, okay.
it is not.
Those are the regular multi-jump characters then.
If I really wanted to, one thing I can go for is drop down and then like mag turn around and then I have that position. But I need to recognize that a bit early just because it's like it does take a little bit of time before you can jump out of mag. Pretty fast, but
Yeah, I think at this
8 frames.
distance too, it's risky because you obviously don't have your jump at that point,
Yeah.
and you're only at 12, but that's almost worse because you're risking more percent by trying that.
Yeah.
Um, so there's not a huge optimization to be made in this specific example because, partially because it's low percent, and partially because you kind of assumed the side B, which isn't a bad assumption. I think you basically made the. This was the safest thing you could have done. I think just regular get up, punish if he goes straight, pressure if he goes up here.
Hmm.
Okay, I do want to point out real quick that his out of shield here is kind of interesting. This is not like a super common Fox thing. His out of shield was short hop drill here. And he does this further into game 2 as well, where he will try to basically clip you with drill. And that's not the worst option, but it does have unique holes. So obviously instead of back air covering this space, instead of neutral air covering maybe this space, drill only kind of covers. It's like a little bit of a greedy option in that if you don't get out of the way, it lets him steal his turn back and begin pressuring Ness shield. And even if the risk is high because Fox, Ness up throw on Fox, that begins to be a situation that he is familiar with, as opposed to Ness pressure on your shield is scary and weird, and it's one of those player-specific Ness things too, where like Akimi pressure shield differently than you do, you pressure shield differently than Resliv does, etc. Let me clear this. So this is just something. It's again one thing that you can see as you're doing stuff, especially if you get a punish like a throw, and then file away to think about later when you have a moment.
Okay. Understood.
All right. I promise I'm going to stop after this.
It's
But
okay.
this is the first example of, even up to the point that I watched, like 4 or 5 times, you get this tech chase, and it's a missed tech center stage because of the magnet timing. He rolls away and spot dodges. So he takes a defensive action, which sounds like, yeah, water's wet, but he takes a defensive action in place. He does not run away, so he is concerned about dash attack being like not the lowest common denominator, but the most one-to-one way to get hit. If you run away, you still get killed by dash attack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for this edge guard, I think if you're going to stay on stage, this is your highest chance of hitting him. So I think this is a good option for where you are. This just DJC fair in place. But again, after this wave dash, I think the better play is to go off stage with fair. I don't know how much specific Fox Falco experience you have, but the kind of read I'm getting is that the Fox and Falco experience you do have, they side beat a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have twice now, at low and high percent, you have respected the possibility of side B and been in the position to cover that and like bear or dare or kill out of shield there. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a habit that I'm not going to say it's like a scrub habit for Fox and Falco to side B here, but I think it is an option that they have to you make them enforce it first before you really like respect it a ton.
Okay, gotcha. I have played a lot of Fox Falcos that do sort of either go for like a side B to ledge or like a slightly above stage side B to try and like clip me or something like that. So it is, I guess, something that I'm really used to doing.
Oh, there's a fun trick for edge guarding spaces. Mewtwo King does this all the time with Marth. It's very once you're aware of it, it's very easy to spot players that do this. So you hit them off stage, right? And the tricky part here is it's a little easier when they're coming down from above to visualize. But the tricky part is, okay, I want to intercept side B, and then if side B doesn't come, because it's only coming at like these two timings. If side B doesn't come and he's out here charging his up B, the goal is to cover this, and then go out there and hit him. What one way that a lot of characters, I believe Ness could probably do this too, can do that is by short hopping at a specific timing. So there is a timing. It's a little more consistent when they're dropping as opposed to double jumping down here. But the basic idea still applies. You want to short hop, and you can do this closer to ledge too. Your fair works as well for it because it has active frames. You want to short hop here such that you fall with Fox. So you're like a little above Fox as he's falling. That way, if he side Bs, which stops him in the air, you can just fair. And if that doesn't come, you can land and then just go hit the up B.
Okay.
Because he's here for 30 frames. And even if you don't hit him by frame 30, by frame 35, he can still only really be, not even that far, he can still only really be here. Like, it does not move very quickly once he starts moving.
Yeah.
Especially with, like, Ness Fair, that disjoint is going to be a real friend in, like, not having to worry about that. So you can use your double jump without worrying about getting clipped and getting, like, reversal edge guarded. That might come up that situation might come up in a better way later in the set, and I won't bring up the whole thing again if it does, but I will try to point it out.
Okay.
Because Fox getting to ledge is powerful and something you want to avoid.
Definitely, with options like ledge dash and ledge dash drill and etc.
And was it 15 iframes or is it 14? It's up there.
It's rough.
Right, but that's Fox pushing out of the corners actually kind of hard if he doesn't have ledge. Because he has to get that space to run forward with Nair, and if he has to run forward with Nair, that means he's either doing early Nair to catch you, which makes it easier to intercept later, or he's doing second thing I'm gonna talk about here, or he's doing like Nair in place and drift, and he doesn't go very far with that. It's kind of like Falcon, right? So without getting a running start, if he's out of shield here, he only really goes here. Or like in place. Or he takes a movement action. So if he's not in shield, right, then he can dash dance and mix up his timing a little better. But if he's not in shield, he could do short hop. Maybe not quite that far, but he can short hop Nair. He could short hop shield stop Nair. He has access to more significant drift because the gap between these options is way bigger. So it's harder to either be safe or cover them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like the same concept as Nest DJC momentum stuff, right? Without your DJC, you only have your aerial drift here. With DJC, not only do you have timing mix-ups, but you also have significantly... you can cover the same space at different timings, and you can cover wider spaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, so this situation. Yeah.
What about really good awareness to down air there and then go for the grab? Because dash attack is a little funky in that way. Sometimes it'll cross you up. Was this supposed to be a forward air, or was this an F tilt? Out of curiosity.
I'm not sure if it was supposed to be a forward air, but very confident that's not supposed to be an F tilt.
Okay, gotcha. Because I don't want to come across like I know the matchup like 1,000,000,000%. But I just think this F tilt only hits if he jumps into it, which is a huge risk for the fox at 20 to jump, like try to immediately jump after being tossed off stage.
Yeah.
Versus the F air, especially with like you could do it immediately and cover like this range. You could do, you could, let's say blue, you could do it rising and cover this area. The only easy way he has out of that is like double jump air dodge, and that's grab punishable if he tries that if you read it. See, but this is the exact kind of thing I was talking about with the fairs, right? Even if he's not dead, you put yourself in a better position. And here, you just kind of can't really cover this. I think if you did a running short hop, I think you could have gotten Nair here before he landed. But
Honestly,
go ahead.
one thing I'm thinking is if you go back a little bit further, I had already hit confirmed the fair, and I had enough time to recognize it once I landed to the platform, so I'm very surprised that I dashed back to the stage when I could have threatened a lot more with another fair by doing like a dash forward quick drop through plat or something. Because at that
That's
point,
true.
Fox doesn't have very many angles to go at, and since he doesn't have a jump, he might as well be dead if he doesn't like call out that I'm gonna do that specifically and go for.
Right. There might be
I'm not
like
really
a
sure.
perfect, extremely precise angle to get around your fair and still barely land to the lip here. But this platform's starting to move to the right. It's not a great spot for him.
Yeah.
So your actions here, kind of like, I forgot he didn't have a jump because it seemed like you were covering double jump side B. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think you're 100% right that like going for that fair here is higher reward and still very low risk. Because backing up here, not only do you give him the time, but you also give up some beef on your punish.
Yeah. Plus, once I actually get there, because I cover the high angle there, I get the fair, and then he just is able to go for the instant side B, and I can't really punish that.
Right. And even if he doesn't go on stage, he has the option to go to ledge here. So even pressuring this is kind of, it's not like a mix up as in you would do something different if he went to ledge, but even
Yeah.
this is a choice he made. So I think there's some space for that. It is kind of similar to Ness in that regard of like it's so much harder to interact with as opposed to just go hit him. And it is a little bit of a not quite as much as Ness, but it's a little bit of like a familiarity or comfort thing of just like just go hit him. Like especially Fox doesn't have thunder. And his Firefox hitting you is way lower reward if he hits you at the base. Like he can't get
Yeah.
stuff off that. So that's
Yeah.
something I would look for in the spacey match in the two three honestly spacey matchups is just using your because fair's active for what like 10ish frames between the three hits. So you can just like have an umbrella. You can just paint a wall in front of Fox here.
Honestly, that's not really something I do that often now that I think about it. A lot of the time, I'm just kind of doing stationary fairs to have like the active hitbox where I think they're gonna be. But if I try to follow them with like, as you mentioned before, their double jump, or if I want to try and cover a bit more angles, I think I should try and go for a bit more of like, I don't know, short hop rising fairs or like those falling fairs that you were mentioning or something like that to
Right.
cover that larger area.
I think this position is also it's interesting because so you get him off stage, you have enough time to let me back up just a little bit. You have enough time to realize, oh, he has pretty poopy DI on this back air. I I don't think there's a he might have barely been able to get the side B to ledge there, but I don't think going to ledge here increases your chances of getting this edge guard. Because you give up your forward air when you do this, as opposed to if from this position instead of magnet, you just like do this with fair. Or even if you like you fall down here, you double jump, you rising fair, that just kills him. Like he just can't get around that. So it's kind of the same thing as the previous edge guards, where it's going to ledge is not usually a bad thing explicitly, but I think you could have gotten higher return on investment by going like further off stage. He still dies here because he's afraid of the bear, but That's like he dies off of drift and a decision he made, not just getting hit against his will.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He actually is kind of edgeguarding you the same way in this instance, where he's not going to intercept you. He's just kind of like hitting your option. It's kind of interesting how similar the edgeguard is for these two characters.
Yeah, one thing that Fox can do that I've seen some foxes do is that he can go for like jump outshine and try and put me in a really bad position for a cover, but it's kind of like a moderate reward for a really high risk of just dying off of the up B2 hit.
Yeah,
So
and even
it's
up B one hit is kind of funky when you fall that fast.
yeah.
That was a, I I want to be mad at that, but that was just really good patience
Yeah.
on the ledge grab.
There was also like something I could have done there if I one thing that I could have done that like I have been trying to work in a bit more is that I was at the height where I could have been able to like drift immediately towards the stage and
Ooh,
landed.
that's true.
Yeah. That one's still just like in the lab though. I'm not used to doing it outside of just raw, I guess.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
your out of shield option here as well, because this dare is really hard to punish, especially as Fox. Like we mentioned, Fox doesn't have a lot of aerial drift, so even if he shields this, hitting you here without being able to like run first is basically just fair, and you're literally at zero. So great numbers on this one,
Hmm.
especially because you could think of the tech chase. Smash Roll Plat coming in super clutch for both of y'all.
Yeah.
Okay. I think after this one, I want to go to the Falco games.
Yeah, that's fine.
This is actually the exact same. We've seen this position a lot, where you, even in this position, let me back up a little more. So you get this nair. And there is probably a world where he can double jump side B ASAP. And then you grabbing ledge here. Yeah, that side B will go to ledge. I think
Yeah.
he jumped late. You grabbing ledge here will either kill him or force the onstage punish, which kills him. But for that kind of stuff that is like the first layer of things they want to do, I think there comes a point in bracket where you're playing players that you have to assume they're not going to do the like really straightforward thing.
Yeah.
Like Ness isn't, for example, Ness, right? Ness is not going to just DJ C fair directly on the front of your shield because even if it's high reward, it's risky.
Yeah. And at this point, I think that it's just something I think this goes back to like the main thing for like the player boxes versus character boxes. At this point, even though I know that like in my Fox box I have that like side B like expecting is kind of what I'm expecting, especially when I fight mid-level foxes. At this point, when we're getting to the last stock of this game, and the only time he's side B'd at all was after I was completely out of position to even try and punish that, I really should just start recognizing offstage situations and what kind of recoveries they like to use so that I can be more prepared to just recognize as soon as they're off stage what they're probably going to do.
Right. And
That's kind of
it's
what I'm getting from all this.
something as well that you can do is part of this is kind of scary because grabbing ledge lets you be reactionary, and especially going off stage as Ness is and using your double jump is scary. But if you're proactive, you can, right, especially with the way angles work in this game. If you're reactionary, Fox has side B, which is hard to directly intercept unless you're using fair, and if you grab ledge, you can't. He has up B and the billions of angles, even without Smashville Plat, unlike a flat stage, he can deal with there. And if you're on ledge, your options are like Nair, which could be kind of probably a weak hit, or Bear, which is a little not inconsistent, but you're challenging a move that moves very quickly or a move that is on fire. So you're pretty likely to trade up B unless you're precisely spacing the bear. All of this is instead of just the side B up B versus versus going and hitting him with fair. You can fair both of these things the same way, just at different timings.
Mhm.
And especially with the huge visual cue, it's fast and kind of tricky, but if you're watching for it, the huge visual cue, you can get that fair out in time. And actually, with fair's active frames, you can probably kind of like fuzzy the timing such that you would hit the back end of your first fair would hit side B, and then you could just double jump rising fair the up B.
Mhm.
But instead of him having all these angles, up B moving, side B timings, especially if he has double jump in the mix, you can just directly cut these off with fair.
Mhm.
Cut off up B angles entirely. If you're off stage facing him and he up B's, he's dead. Frankly, he is dead. Like, there's not a world where he gets past fair, unless he has like the Smashville plat or some like extenuating circumstance, like it trades and that's unfortunate, so you have to land. And side B, he can mix up the timing somewhat, but Fox falls really fast, so he can't play that game of chicken for like a huge amount of time, especially with how floaty Ness is. You can occupy that space for a reasonably long amount of time, such that his side B has to be very specifically timed to avoid your fair or your threat of fair.
Mhm.
So if you don't, the big thing here is you don't want to let him get access to up B, because then if he gets to move with up B, it's even if you get your onstage punish, that is a punish off of you being right on the angle, as opposed to just hitting him for pressing B.
Mhm.
There's like more points of contact for him to make it back than otherwise would be. The same kind of like reasoning why you chain grab people instead of tech chasing them if you have both options.
Yeah.
That way they just physically can't move. All right, then that's confirm. Hella good SDI. Let's go.
Thank you.
I will never not pop off for SDI to avoid Fox kill confirms at like 80.
One thing, I don't know if you know this, if you want to quickly pause. One thing I've always wondered with Ness is if using the double jump shifts his hurt box such that it's way easier to get the SDI, because I did use my double jump in that specific situation, but I'm not sure if just the raw SDI would have been enough on its own, or if that like double jump specifically impacted it.
If he's going for 2-hit up air, you're gonna be in the same animation for the second hit regardless. But, what? Why am I? What? Did I press slash or something?
I don't know.
But if he's going for only single hit, that could make a difference. It could also slightly affect the timing of the first up air hit, either for or against your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But here, I don't think it came up here. I think this was just SDI.
Okay.
Because Mewtwo can kind of do the same thing with the way his tail works. Not with double jump, but if first hit up air clips the tail, first hit up air doesn't ever send him to the tumble. So he's in his regular airborne animation at that point, which if his tail, let me rephrase this. He will be facing Fox, which means his tail is over here, which is good for Mewtwo. I don't think Ness has a horizontal discrepancy in that same way. So I don't think it would be a big deal. Probably try to keep it in that case, because in the event you do SDI out, now you have your aerial options. You have all that threat space, as opposed to just being stuck with drift and your like normal stuff.
Yeah. I've always wondered if it was just like, oh, I use my jump and it's easier to SDI, or if it was just like a confirmation bias where I notice it a lot more when I do it.
If it's not very tight, you might be getting a horizontal momentum for the double jump, which would be a bigger factor than the hurt box, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like a frame or two, I don't think you're getting significant momentum. Unless even with SDI, it barely misses. Like if it's like phantom hit levels of missing, then maybe the double jump made an impact, but otherwise, meh. Okay, let's go ahead and finish this up and then go to one of the Falco games. Because this is also another really good way to kind of get that info on the player. Is one, you're both at high percent. So because you're both at high percent, there is more tension in the match. Silver's going to do his silver things he's going to go into his habits as a kind of like backup plan.
Mhm.
Like we've talked before, like whether you, however you want to call it, it's his, it's his player habits coming out because he's nervous, because it's tense. It's his hands playing, not his head. This is where we get silver, right? We get the silver habits, the silver kill confirm he's looking for. Because with Fox, that is kind of he has so many that there are multiple, and that is kind of good info to know.
Yeah.
Let me get rid of this. There we go. I don't quite remember this one. Oh wait, yeah, I do. This one's rough. He gets you the shine up throw up air. I'm kind of surprised that up second hit hits you there too. That's kind of whack. Let's go.
That's rough.
But
Was he like slightly drifting forward on that? Can we like?
Oh, yeah, he was like running.
Okay.
That's something that you can kind of do with is it's usually you usually don't need it because SDI is better in PM, but you can like partial DI to try to mix up. Oh, if he runs, he'll go a little too far, and you can SDI past him. And if he doesn't run, he won't go far enough, and you can SDI away from him. But the big thing here is he actually does this a lot, especially, and then it comes out here a lot. He's fishing for drill shine to pressure, catches you out of shield, kills you. We saw him go drill out of shield earlier in the set too. Even when he was at 0, it's just a kind of like a good pressure tool.
Yeah, that's right.
So with this one game, now most of his aerials at this point are drills. And there's a lot of value to that. They're active. They get high reward on hit because they can go to shine. They get pretty high reward on shield because you still have to worry about shine and grab. And shine leads to grab, and grab itself leads to grab, of course. So this is one of those things. If we're in the silver box, we can have a little nuance. Like, a lot of foxes will use drill, but maybe this is a silver thing. Maybe he really likes drill. For like neutral space coverage over Nair. And we see a little earlier in this that I think he like barely misses you because he used drill. Like he gets a Nair there and then he uses drill there. But like it is a different move that covers different angles, and especially as Ness with the amount of freedom you have in the air and your timing mix-ups, that gives you that kind of, even something kind of minor like that can give you a lot of leeway. Both because I think silver's going to drill when it comes down to it, and because Nair won't kill me, drill might. It's like a numbers thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Which Falco game did you want to watch? We have Delfinos, Green Hill, and Battlefield.
Green Hill definitely not. I was basically on the verge of four-stocking him.
Oh no.
He did end up bringing it back, and it was like a JV3, I think. But the first while was pretty rough for him, I think. But
Cloud was not in his favor.
Yeah. I think
Battlefield.
I guess it kind of depends, because in Delfinos he used his space like a boatload, and I remember basically being locked down by lasers for basically the entire game. Battlefield, I think, was a bit of a closer game, but I also remember that I think I threw myself off stage at one point, and that ended up being at a deficit, but then afterwards I only like really brought it back from like 0 to death off a couple of reads. I'm not entirely sure. I have no big preference.
Let's go with Delfinos then.
Okay.
And for characters that play multiple players, for players that play a few characters, it's a different kind of skill to basically figure out, like, okay, this is the fox box, and you have, or the fox Venn diagram with the Falco. So, like, obviously he won't be using drill in the same way as Falco because it's a very different move, and he won't be using lasers the same way because they're very different moves. But when the characters are kind of similar, like, you have shield pressure, we'll say SP, you have recovery. when you can kind of get a head start on this because you've been playing against Silver for 2 games, and he's going to a relatively similar character as opposed to like, oh, maybe Silver's pocket DDD. It's like, okay, almost start over at that point. This can be a good kind of way of, especially if it's character verse, and you can pick the stage with this in mind. You can go, okay, at high percent, maybe just wait and see until he shows his hand. Because something else that Silver did was, at high percent, kind of got locked into drill at the end of that game 1. He only had that one nair in the last like 10 seconds. And, you know, again, drill is high reward and relatively the same risk as nair there. But if he's kind of a little tunneled on that, he might be a little tunneled on maybe like, you know, something equivalent on Falco. What it is specifically isn't the big deal. The idea is that you get the head start. Because obviously the grab games are very different. The kill confirms are mostly different. The neutral's very different. But the points of similarity can give you a head start to where, again, then if by game 3 Silver consciously goes, okay, now that I'm playing Falco, I'm going to just start side being like crazy. Then it's a lot easier to notice that when you're proven wrong, basically.
Yeah.
So like that's why watching a set you didn't play in, and it's kind of hard to guess what they're going to do until you put yourself into that mindset of like, oh, I feel like, oh, he's been thrown off stage. I feel like this is the side B. And then you're either right or you're wrong. And if you're right, especially if it's a little specific, if you're right, you're like, hell yeah. If you're wrong, you remember like, oh, he didn't side B. That is surprising information. That is new information. That can kind of set you up for like it sticking out in your head more when you have an idea.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, sick. There's definitely a line to walk. Hell yeah, there's a line to walk because if you're basing your actions off of like hard reads of what they're going to do, it's a little scary. But for more generalized stuff or like specific situations, like, oh, for recovery, here's my guess, and this is what I'm going to decide to cover, based on like historically what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Seems like his combo game is better. Ooh, okay. It seems like his combo game is a lot more consistent. That might be one reason why he switched. This is good data. That SDI into like immediate counterattack is very important data, because now you have 2 options, right? Whenever someone shows that that they know the counterplay and they're going to do the counterplay to like get like turn your advantage into theirs, your options are to do something else. Your options are pick something else. I'll say do something else. Do something else. Or do it anyway, but actively bait their counterattack.
Mm-hmm.
So for this example, by game 3, Silver's going, oh yeah, that's right, that jab reset, I can probably SDI that, let me give that a go, and then in this case immediately grab. Well, if you do that down tilt and then you immediately spot dodge, the numbers are going to vary based on the situation, but if you introduce the situation in the same way, you have not proven him wrong yet. So he doesn't have a strong reason to think that, oh, I think she's going to mix it up this time. He's probably going to be doing the same thing the second time because it worked the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So again, for this example, it'd be down tilt into like pivot F smash, or down tilt into like dash dance grab. And then you have the benefit of the third time. You can choose to enforce a third time option and basically go, okay, I'm going to do this again. Are you going to be ready for it? Because have you given up on even doing the counterplay? 2, are you going to, maybe this time he gets out of it and he shields, or this time he gets out of it and he rolls away, or he does something else. This is now something that he has to think about. This is his decision. So that's taking away from, if you watch the Comb the Comb video, from his pie chart, from his focus, if this is 100%, this is kind of a niche situation, so let's call this 10% or 5%, right? He now has 95% to think about the rest of the match with. or at least as this comes up, if no other time. The same kind of thing, like if you're a Falcon, you're playing against a human robot that power shields literally every single laser. That's a problem you got to deal with your resource you have, your focus, your attention, whatever you want to call it. So, your neutral is going to be a little worse, partially because you aren't using laser as much, partially because you're thinking about, oh, what do I do? How do I handle this? Mm-hmm. That's one reason why trying something new, usually it's worse than when you're used to it, because you have hesitation involved. Not only do you have literal pathways of like Fox offstage up being here, right? Like Mewtwo King has the 3-step process, right? He has the short hop, optional fair. He has runoff, and then he fairs the up B, because he hits the side B and he's made it a guaranteed position. And the reason this works is because it is, like I said, it's like a machine. He does not have to react to a lot. There is no real new situation that he's going to be put in here, so he can just allocate this entirely to his hands and then focus entirely on seeing, oh, did this fair hit, right? Mm-hmm. In a similar way, let me go ahead and delete some of this. Let's say, use the same example of Marth spacing. Let's say somebody who's not doing that, they do short hop, and then they remember, oh yeah, I need the short hop at this timing, and then it's spacing. Okay, so now do I fair? Okay, he didn't side B, so now I run off, right? And then do I double jump? I think I double jump here. I don't want to get tipper, and okay, now I can fair. That was the stock, and both from an attention perspective, both from a 100% of focus, whatever resource you want to call it, your brain power, your head, etc. Both from that perspective and from a literal physical perspective, this takes longer to process. That's one reason why putting players in boxes is so useful, because if you have your silver box, you can kind of ignore the things he doesn't really do. Or, for example, the Fox box, Fox is not going to grounded neutral B. So you don't have to worry about Fox grounded neutral B. That's one less thing to think about, especially against faster characters that can dictate the neutral and are a problem. They can quickly present problems like short hop nair, short hop drill, run up shine, run up grab, run past bear, maybe rar bear. You have to deal with all that crap. You don't have to worry about grounded lasers, because you can just write that off as oh, that's just, that's not in the Fox box, grounded lasers. That's just not something that is good, so you can just assume they don't do it. You don't need to have counterplay for grounded lasers. It's not good enough to require that respect, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that a Ness spamming grounded side B and only grounded side B, you don't need to think about what to do. You just jump over it and hit him. You don't need to go through this process of problem solving mid match, because he's doing PK flash, right? That's not something you need to think about. You don't need to find a solution mid match. This same kind of thing is useful in neutral, right? So if you have whether it's the Falco box or you have the read on silver specifically, if you go, okay, laser timing, or even just general timing is very useful for this. I think I have a lock in their timing. Now this can be 30%, and maybe the rest of the focus of the mental energy, etc., can be on the punish, or it can be on the spacing, or it can be on the on the fuse. How long is silver going to keep this timing? You literally don't have to think about the timing as hard as you otherwise would. So yeah. You can free up your brain to think about why are we on Delphinos? Why did he ban that stage? Maybe not against Spacey, but against slower characters, you have a little more time. oh, we're on this stage. I picked this stage. Why did he ban Wario? Is he afraid of plats? Is his plat game bad? That can like once you have the timing to ask questions, you have the breathing room and the like mental energy, the focus to ask questions, you can get answers, which sounds really obvious. But if we're trying to put Silver in a box, trying to compartmentalize his stuff into this box to basically have a shorthand to ask more questions basically. What is his timing? Oh, this is his timing. Into the box, right? Timing. What are his recovery habits? Oh, this. Into the box. And now those questions are gone, but the answers are still there. Mm-hmm. So now you can get to the more complex stuff because you have the time for it. Like, oh, what are his laser habits? That's a complicated question. What are his neutral habits? What are his like out of shield timings in this situation? Like more specific, more nuanced, more like freeform. Has this player like? Do I think he's going to revert to the same timings as his shield is diminishing? Like you watch the come video as that bomb, as that fuse starts ticking down. Where on here is he going to act? Because that's a player question, that's a character question, that's a you question based on how you're pressuring. There's a lot of things that go into that, and you can only really do that if you can kind of get them in that position without having to go 100% in the sense that you haven't been able to think about anything ahead of time.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a lot. I said I would try not to do that, and I did it anyway, and I'm sorry.
I mean, I think that was mostly everything, almost everything else I wanted to cover pretty much. So that was very good.
Okay, let's finish out this game then.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to say, like, oh yeah, here's the Fox box, and then you want to have a Silver box. But even if you're not expecting to play Silver specifically, having practiced, like, putting things in boxes is very useful.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that this is already something, not necessarily that I do for, like, newer players, but when I go back and try and fight people that are already at SG, it's like I already know what I put into their box specifically. Like,
oh, you absolutely have a twisty box, whether it's a conscious thing or otherwise. You have your twisty box, you have your Serb box. They might not be as clear cut or as conscious, but like their habits. You've played them 20 some odd times. You have your Moto box. Moto box. Shout out to Moto for the layout also. This layout's rad.
Yeah, 100%.
And like you have this information in your subconscious, in your hands, however you're going to put it. But that's from a long period of time. Being able to do this consciously and being able to do this quickly is a very different skill. But it's super useful. Because then there's one more thing that being able to put people in boxes. And I want to be clear about this every time I bring this up. Like, this is a temporary thing.
Of course.
Yeah, you have your Serb box. And players have habits for reasons they're pretty slow to change compared to conscious stuff. But against players that realize that you're putting them in a box to free up your energy and focus to worry about the rest of the game, it's a hard game. They can start actively, instead of being like, oh, this is the Serb yellow timing, this is the Serb yellow neutral. They can be like, oh, you know what? I don't feel like Serb today. This is going to be a different timing. Why? It's different. That's the only reason you need. Because now it doesn't fit. So it's outside of the box. And now it can feel like you don't have a timing to like default to against Serb, for instance. So now it's this really fun mental game of, oh, Serb realizes I'm putting him in a box. That means there's probably a Kuma box. Because usually by the time people like get to the point of realizing, oh, I need to mix up my timing, the obvious thought is like, oh, I need to mix up my timing, and they need to mix up their timing. So now that maybe once he does that, you realize, oh, there's a Kuma box. Well, it'd be a real shame if Kuma neutral just like completely, where's green? If we just stole a Kimi neutral for like 5 seconds, right? If all we do is just go for EX Fire for like 5 seconds, see if Serb knows how to deal with that. Because the biggest thing here is partially, it's not like, oh, this is a better or worse timing. It's that it doesn't fit. So now instead of being able to like slightly autopilot, like, oh, 20% of just paying attention to the Serb box to make sure nothing's different, now it's, wait, something's different in the Serb box. I have to pay attention to what's different. It's like if you it's like if you come home and your TV remote is upside down and you know you didn't put it. Now you're thinking, okay, well, what else is different? Is my sandwich still in the fridge? You have to check on things. So by mixing up timing, now we don't know if this is the same neutral. We don't know if he's like on the same wavelength with regards to. Maybe Serb usually just goes for like, oh, I'll mix it up once. Maybe he'll mix it up twice or 4 times or not at all. And in a way, that means the Serb box is now smaller because you have to rebuild the Serb box. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is so much fun. But yeah, once both players are kind of that same acknowledgement, that's when you get the stuff like Mango walk up down smash, right? Because it's the Fox player going, 1, oh, the character is going to hit me really fast, and 2, oh, Mango's really good at the character, so therefore Mango's like, nah. Mm-hmm. Something I think about the floaty to spacey matchup, especially Falco. This shield grab, I love it. I unironically think that you take this shield grab almost every day of the week.
Yeah, 100%.
Because if you get shined, who cares, right? And if you get up throw, he dies or comes close to it. Especially with Falco specifically, even his running momentum isn't a ton to go chase you into the air. Ooh, okay, that's actually a really good note. This is weird. Going for shield out of spacey pressure means that they are expecting and respecting an out of shield option that is aggressive. So here he realizes, oh, he's out of, shine won't reach. That's the wrong color. Shine won't reach. And I think that she's going to move out of shield because she's been, bearing out of shield. She's been daring out of shield frequently. That's an interesting thing to kind of like jot down. Uh-huh. Especially as... Oh, he's dead.
Okay, yeah.
In this instance, because his up B doesn't go far enough, he has to side B here. I think that F tilt is fine. It's what you should do.
It was actually not necessarily the F tilt, but rather that, like, the platform completely messed up my dash there when it came up. So it came out as a walk. So for a moment while watching it, I panicked about what I would do after.
I love the wave dash at the end to be like, oh, I gotta go faster. Like, it's not faster, but it's fun.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah. Anyways.
So yeah, that was the last soapbox to stay on topic. Let's just go over this a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. For instance, that is a good example of you believed that he was going to drop ledge and try to hit you, and he did. Because that's what he's been doing in games 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. So in this case, you cash that in, and see now, this time, I bet you if you had gone to the same position and done the same thing, he would have tried something at least slightly different. Because now he realizes, oh, that thing I did, she assumed I was going to do the same thing, and was right, and got ledge for, maybe not for free, but, cashed in that habit for ledge. Mm-hmm. So now, Silver is, if that situation comes up again, Silver will be thinking, do I do the same thing? Do I do a different habit? Because there's a lot of like endless mind games with the sense of like it's cyclical of like, oh, well, she knows that I know that she knows that I know that, etc.
Yeah.
But there is also numbers behind it. Ooh, I was like, there's also numbers behind it. Right? So, like, if you, like that Fox edgeguarding example, if you, go off stage and, where's my hair? If you go off stage and fair, The numbers on him getting back are really bad, but maybe there's a very specific thing he can do if Smash Plat's up here, and he can go straight up, where that's usually very unsafe. So maybe Silver believes, oh, Smash Plat's right here. I'm just going to go straight up because I'm pretty sure that she's going to come in with fair. And also that's the only thing he can really do to avoid it, which is important.
Yeah.
As the situations get less extreme, it becomes harder to tell, but in those very skewed situations, so like Falco, right? You shield grab at high percent when you're at high percent because it's Falco Shine. And so long as you're holding like away, you're fine. Versus if you get the grab, you almost certainly either kill him or get very close.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes just even if you don't necessarily have info that says Silver's not going to have tight pressure after his landing aerial, why not? Like, you're betting what, like 8% and stage against the stock.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you something that is extremely fun is being on the other end of this, realizing like, oh, of course they're going to do that, and picking a hyper-specific option that punishes this exact exchange. Even if it's not a lot, even if it's only like 20%, right? Because now the bet has changed. The bet is now, okay, if you get the grab, you get a stock, but if you don't, then I get my maybe 25%. Or a worse position than just being above Falco with your double jump, right? Yeah. Maybe being off stage with your double jump. Because as these numbers change, it's partially that the numbers are, better now for the Falco. It's also partially that, oh, well, I didn't know that there was a significant punish to what I was doing. So if they can get 25%, what's the worst case scenario? Do I do this last stock? Am I confident enough to know that there is not something that Falco could do that can kill me off of this? Maybe they have a read. Maybe, they're cashing in something in the Kumatora box to try to get like a hard read on something. Double jump habits, boom. That could be a stock. And this kind of momentum is how you can, especially as Spaceys who have a lot of options, this is how you build, kind of like equalize the scales, because you only have to do this 1 or 2 times. You show that, oh, you thought you were only going to get hit by Shine for 8%. Actually, you took more damage. You thought you were going to take more damage. Actually, you took an awful edgeguard situation as a character that is not like that. You thought you took the edgeguard. Actually, there might be a 0 to death in here if I get like a player specific read on something. And this is why you see people eventually with enough back and forth, people will stop shield grabbing this every time. And it's the important distinction is every time, because if it's only 8%, frankly, if it's only 8%, I think you always do it. You just simply always do it. If you're not going to die, especially at these numbers, the score is just too good for you. But if it could be 25, that introduces a situation where you don't shield grab. If it could be more than that, that introduces both unknowns and more situations where you don't shield grab. And this kind of thing is a real slippery slope. Because, like I mentioned here, if you plug a player habit, right? If you plug a player habit into like a decently big opening, especially with either of these characters, frankly, you can like murder someone at any percent. So that's why sometimes, even in PM, where the Shine isn't intangible, and the situation's a little more well known because the L cancels aren't going to get messed up by hit lag or shield lag, I believe is the term, but by the game pausing for a frame when you hit shield. Sometimes, maybe only 5% of the time, but sometimes you don't shield grab here once this begins happening. And that's how the Falco player gets away with like the really tricky stuff, where like aerial into wait for a spot dodge, which is wild, right? Aerial into late dare aerial into, charge smash attack. This is part of that is you're also getting into the player habit box, but like this is where you get the stuff that is really nitty gritty and like evil. Okay, soapbox has been put away for the final time. I am a liar and I apologize.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make
Uh,
sense?
it does. Anyways, I think we should probably start wrapping up now just because I do have commitments to do today as well.
Gotcha.
So, like, if you want to play through the video at like 2 times speed and just like watch the rest of it and
Sure.
I guess make comments as we go, then
We can get the kind of like general stage positioning here. This is
yeah.
something that's kind of useful. Is also playing a VOD at like high speed and being like, okay, where did the match take place? Like, if you died, where were you before then? If you got the kill, where were they?
I've never thought of it that way, honestly.
Because you have less information. Like, you obviously can't, like, at this speed, you can't really, like, focus on what individual moves are being used.
Yeah.
So it's maybe see, oh, you got launched up in the air twice into no follow up. What moves were that? Those were probably shines. Oh, also this looks insanely slow now.
Yeah.
Why did Silver have to shine you? Presumably have to. He didn't. Why did he shine you? Maybe he was trying for Shine Bear and missed. Maybe something else. Like that can give you a different perspective.
Uh-huh.
That shine was shield pressure. Okay, maybe that reinforces that. Oh, going for the shield grab is a-okay. At that percent.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of things like this can get you a broader perspective of stage control. Like here, you got put in the corner and did not get out on last stock here. And that's something that we can kind of like go into if you like that's something you can go into if you want. Like now that you've seen it, we can turn autoplay off. Always turn autoplay off. It's
Yeah.
easier to go, oh, okay, we got to this throw, and then you were on the left, I believe, once here. But aside from that, kind of just scrapping, once you got in the corner here, it was bad. Like, you didn't get out.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go to 2-to-1 speed. It looks weird. It's unpleasant to watch. But that can be a tool to kind of get the more general overview of, especially with like Falco lasers, like, oh, what space, where am I going to avoid lasers? Am I contesting them head on? Or, as the Falco, how are they getting around my lasers? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else you want to cover just super briefly before you head out?
Yeah. There was one question I wanted as a follow-up that I think is very relevant and would help me for Blacklisted.
Perfect. Shoot.
So, taking this concept of putting people into a box, one thing that I often do, just kind of as my general shield pressure before I really learn any sort of habits, is I tend to try and start a pressure string using a low aerial magnet and then stuff like bear details afterwards.
Okay.
And that tends to be very successful when people keep shielding it. But both versus Boyko and versus some friendlies and in some friendlies versus Ivane yesterday, uh, one thing that stuck out to me a bunch that I think comes into this concept is that their immediate responses to when I was like magneting wasn't to just keep holding shield as everyone else does, but for Boyko it was to spot dodge the magnet, and for Ivane it was to crouch cancel the magnet. And that's not something I really encounter all that often. So I'm wondering, that stuck out to me. I noticed that immediately, and they were present for basically the entire time that we were playing. Once I notice something like that that's outside of the box, how can I how can I figure out what to do from there, I guess?
I think the easiest way is to work backwards. So let's take Boyko, right? Boyko was spot dodging. Spot dodge is invincible, like frame like 2 or very quickly, and then it has a vulnerable period at the end. So the solution is to hit him, like obviously the solution to beat spot dodge is to hit them at the vulnerable period at the end. Or maybe the frame before, but Ness doesn't really have the tools, like a shine for that. And even then, that's super hard. So
Yeah.
in this case, it would be some kind of timing change. You could do magnet into something else. You could hold magnet for longer. Magnet into delayed aerial. You could do no magnet. You could do, you know, tomahawk. If he's CCing, the trick. One trick is also what is he seeing that is making him crouch cancel or spot dodge in this case. Delayed aerial. We could do, you know, maybe fair for spot dodge if it's active enough, depending on when you land. You could do magnet into tomahawk, just like wave dash down. You could do delayed magnet. Because the magnet hitbox, the good hitbox is when you release magnet, right?
No. It's a consistent hitbox that happens on frame 8 all the time.
Okay, gotcha.
And then if I absorb a projectile, it refreshes that hitbox.
Okay, so in this case, instead of maybe doing like short hop magnet right when you leave the ground, it can be like short hop magnet as you land almost. And then for let's say that's for spot dodge, right? This is also all using magnet. So this is assuming you even magnet at all, versus kind of realizing, oh, he's spot dodging magnet on this other trigger, this other thing he's seeing that makes him spot dodge magnet. No one's getting hit by magnet, or no one's spot dodging between frames 1 and 6 of magnet. They're spot dodging because Ness is in the position where magnet is coming. So if you want a completely different option, maybe, you know, delayed aerial. A lot of the times people will be CCing during spot dodge. So delayed dare. Or maybe if he's not CCing, maybe you want to try up air. Just for the base knockback, get some tech chases going. Delayed bear if you think they're CCing as well. And like some magic percents where they'll just die for it. Maybe tomahawk in general for getting around that spot dodge to mix up your timing. Instead of stalling in the air with magnet, that little bit you do, just short hop at them and grab them. Short hop at them and, you know, maybe like down tilt, start building percent at 0. Against these characters, not particularly a great option, but, you know, it's kind of working backwards from there. So let's say that's for spot dodge. Let's say for CC, you can do a little bit of working backwards and a little bit of working forwards. Because CC is so universal and so significant, it might be easier to just go like, hey, what beats CC, right? So grab, you know, dare. Side B if you can get it out. I'll go ahead and list it here. It's a weird option at that range. And then if you just want to build percent, down tilt beats it in a way. You can just get your percent.
Yeah.
So then now that we have that, okay, how do we get around CC? The issue is that he's CCing the magnet, right? There is a numbers solution to, oh, does dare beat shine? Well, okay, for shine, not really a numbers solution, but you know, does dare beat shield grab after CCing magnet? There's also the same kind of situation of, oh, why is Ivane CCing me? Because he's seeing me short hop at him. Again, because no one's actually CCing magnet on reaction to magnet. They're CCing magnet on reaction to the short hop or the position and the habit of, oh, I played against Ness when after they fair, or for shield pressure, you know, that they a lot of the times they'll do short hop magnets into like DJC aerial. So this is what beats CC directly. What could beat CC indirectly is timing. You know, you could mix up your timing of any of these things. For Wolf, it's kind of hard, so I'll leave a little star, because CC Shine is such a threat, especially if you're jumping.
I will note he was playing Falco.
Falco? Kind of the same deal with Shine, but timing beating CC is more of a difficult to punish as opposed to direct like, oh, I grabbed their CC. It's like, well, their CC option didn't hit me in time because they didn't do it great because I did magnet later than they thought. Because if it's anything but like down B or down tilt, a lot of the time CC into option will be a little delayed unless they know exactly when it's coming. Something else that can like soft beat it is spacing. You know, this is more that it beats the option afterwards. So let's say Roy CC down tilt, right? Or even, actually, Falco CC Shine's a really good example. Falco CC Shine is really good, but really tiny. So if you think Falco CC Shine is coming, don't magnet or magnet very carefully, such that it's out of shine range. So maybe like forward air can beat CC in that way, especially against characters that don't have great down tilts for punishing forward air in that way. To follow up on spacing, this is something that's in your control because when they CC, they are not moving. Wait, that's not an equal sign. If they're ASDIing down, they can kind of be moving. Most people aren't full on running. But CC means they are not moving. Which means they are giving up something in neutral or in a scramble situation with the hopes that you kind of take a bait. Whether they're correct on the excuse me, whether they're correct that their CC shine will hit or not, that's up to you. Like again, forward air, if they're not moving, you can easily, maybe not super easily depending on position, but you can. It is within your power to space the forward air. They're not moving. It's within your power to space the down tilt, whether close or far. Against Spacey's probably not close, for instance. Especially if you realize when they're starting to CC, because the timing comes from some trigger. It comes from some stimulus that makes them go, oh, I should hold down. I should just take the damage and get a counterattack here. Or counter pressure of some kind if it's shine, right? This is also in your control. This is you. All of this is you when someone decides to CC. So working backwards, we have the things that directly beat CC. Grab obviously beats CC. Your Dare is great at beating CC. Down tilt and side B can kind of beat CC in a kind of like softer way. But if they're waiting for something to try to get a really good punish, especially if it's not down tilt, they're waiting for you to do your thing at the same timing. They're waiting for maybe they run up into CC for that to throw off your spacing. But that's up to you. And as a player thing, a lot of people don't CC and then stop CCing and move. That's just not a thing people do. Like maybe like Roy's and like Marth's, they'll like run up, crouch, and then like move as a check, but it's pretty uncommon. So it can feel really oppressive that when you hit them, they hit you back harder, especially because Nest needs to be so aerial based, where you don't have access to the same tools. But because you're aerial based, you have a lot more precision in your drift, in your spacing. With magnet stalls and fast falling, you have a lot more precision in your timing. You can be threatening for longer. Fast fall tomahawk is a very different timing than no fast fall dare. Very different timing than no fast fall tomahawk grab. Very different timing than magnet stall at the very tip of the hitbox, punish the shine, right? Like, I'm not trying to say that there's not a solution, but the solution is your approach being different.
Yeah.
Because to kind of use this example again, the reason they're seeing you is because, this is their Kumatora box. They're going, or even their Nest box, right? Oh, Fair is coming. I'm going to CC. They're going to DJC Fair into me, and then I can mash Roy down tilt. Well, if that DJC Fair only hits the tip, or if that DJC Fair isn't a DJC Fair, then all of a sudden, boom, they now have to fill the gap in the box. They got to plug the leak in the boat, as it were. Especially if you actively punish them. So if they're waiting for DJC Fair and you like DJC empty bear into like grab, all of a sudden now it's like, okay, they got to reevaluate this, which takes time and effort. Which both opens up DJC Fair as an example for like to back on the table somewhat, and you now have a new threat in neutral that is really wacky and probably shouldn't work unless they're looking for CC of, for this example again, DJC empty bear grab. Or empty bear grab, yeah.
I should note that I do gotta wrap up.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is a thing that only works if they're expecting something else. But now, if they're expecting this, your normal stuff works. Okay, did that all make sense?
Yeah.
Sick.
Definitely.
I think the biggest takeaway is definitely that you are in more control of the situation. When they CC, they give up control for better numbers on the punish. Yeah. So thank you so much for booking, Kuma.
Of course. Thank you so much for coaching once again. I feel as prepared as I can be for Blacklisted at this point.
Hell yeah.
So yeah,
Sick. Good luck at Blacklisted.
thank you.
And if you have any
Are you
questions about matchups or anything, just shoot me a message.
can do? Are you gonna be at a jailbreak?
I am going to be at Jailbreak, yeah.
All right. In that case, I'll probably see you there.
Hell yeah, that's in a week. That's next week. Oh god. I have a flight next week. Okay.
Nice.
But yeah, thank you so
Same.
much.
Yeah.
Stream,
Have a
I'm going
good.
to go ahead to a middle screen real quick because I'm going to set up the next lesson, lickety split. So hang around for another lesson,